All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rachak. Double honors to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of Great Millstone, who rule very well, very beautifully. Double salutations be unto the Akim, I heard pushing this gospel in truth and in sincerity, to the best of their ability, given to them by Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai. Peace, blessings, and salutations be unto the elect scattered abroad. May the election of Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Lord willing, fall upon their houses. This is Brother Quanawath come back at you, Lord will, with the edifying lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Lord will. It is edifying, Lord will. It is straight to the point. And as you see right here, right on the end time headlines, it says explosion of stomach cancer sweeping the U.S., right? And really, right, when you ultimately get into this article, which we're about to get into, and, as you, really start to, put two and two together, right, a lot of this shit stems from the food, right, that we eat, right, the food that we're given, that's put on these shelves, which we know is genetically modified, right, GMO, right, as they say, and this is what is causing all these different illnesses, all these different, as we see, like cancers and viruses and whatnot that, people ultimately get. They're getting it from, the food, right? This is why people are dying, at younger and younger ages, right? As the generations pass on, people are dying younger, Food is supposed to ultimately, give you life, give you energy, but the food that we have here in America, especially, ultimately it takes your life, it literally kills you, right? A lot of the foods that are ultimately, here in America, a lot of the food here is banned, overseas, man, in different countries, right? So America, is literally pushing extremely defiled food, which is, all part of the curses. Let me grab this and we'll get into this article. This is Ezekiel 4, just hitting the point, verse 13. It says, "And Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai said, even thus shall the children of Israel eat their defiled bread among the Gentiles, whither I will drive them." Now again, you have Israelites, right, scattered abroad, right, scattered into all these different nations, right, and to a certain degree, right, they're eating defiled food as well, right, but the worst of it is here in America, right, Babylon the Great, the epicenter of wickedness in the earth. This is the place where all the fucking GMO food is at, man. Again, you have GMO food, right, really all over the world in different countries, but America is the worst. This is why a lot of foods in America are banned, right? Let's get into the article. It says stomach cancer cases among younger Americans are rising at an alarming rate, reversing decades of progress and claiming lives like that of fitness influencer Carly Douglas, right? This lady was into fitness, right? Taking care of herself, working out, right? But see that, again, that doesn't do much, right? There's a saying, right, when it comes to being fit or being healthy, right? They say 80% of, you being healthy or you being, losing weight, is what? 80% of that is your diet, right? 80% of you either gaining weight, losing weight, becoming healthy. It's not just working out, right? It's actual diet, right? What are you eating, And you got a lot of, like, when you look at, the average American is obese, right? Not just, chubby or chunky, no, obese. Like, these people are fucking huge walking around, man, And a lot of that does stem, from, discipline, right? These people eat 5, 6, 7 times a day, These people don't know how to let their body rest, let their body digest the food that they have ultimately just ate 5 minutes ago, Then they turn around and ultimately go and eat some more food, 20, 30 minutes later, man. Talk about I'm hungry. No, you're not. You're just bored, You're stressed out, right? And you're using that as a crutch, a vice, you know? People don't have discipline. These people are stressed out. And that's what they turn to, where they either turn to alcohol or drugs, or they turn to eating. And that's what a lot of people do. They turn to eating, you know? And that's unhealthy for you, right? It says just 3 months before her death at age 36, Douglas, which is young, right? It says Douglas, a mother of 3 from Greensville, South Carolina, posted a defiant message to her 140,000 Instagram followers after being rushed to the hospital with severe abdominal pain and bloating. Cancer picked the wrong girl, she declared. Weeks earlier, she had been sharing videos of intense home workouts and family life. Her passing this week has sent ripples of shock through her online community. Douglas' story underscores a disturbing natural trend. Once in steady decline, thanks to reduced smoking, better hygiene, and improved food preservation, stomach cancer diagnoses in people under 50 are now increasing by about 1% annually. Right? Overall, this disease claims around 31,500 new cases yearly in the United States, with an average diagnosis age of 68, but the uptick is concentrated among younger adults, right? They're getting younger and younger. And again, it goes back to the food that we eat, It says experts point to modern lifestyle factors, right? Dr. Amar Rawari, a radiation oncologist at Luminous Health in Maryland, noted evidence linking heavily salted or processed foods to higher risk. There you go, right? The food, right? It says ultra-processed foods, which dominate many Americans' diets, are associated with a 20 to 25% increased risk of stomach cancer. Alcohol consumption, particularly 3 or more drinks daily, also elevates danger, with risk rising even at lower levels, right? Dr. Yang Wu, a gastroenterologist at City of Hope Hospital in California, described seeing many patients in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, otherwise healthy individuals in the prime of life, building careers and raising families, who simply never imagined they could have cancer. Early symptoms such as bloating after small meals, persistent indigestion, nausea, abdominal pain, heartburn are frequently dismissed as minor digestive problems. By the time many seek help, the cancer has advanced. Overall 5-year survival stands at 37%, dropping below 8% for stage 4 cases like Douglas's, right? So you don't catch it, right? After that 5-year period, man, you only got a 37% chance of survival, right? Once it hits that stage 4, and you only got 8% chance of survival, man, right? So the mortality rate, right, is very the mortality rate is increasing, right? More and more people are dying, Let me grab this, man. This is Isaiah, right? We bring this out, frequently, right? Just dealing with the subject, right? This is Isaiah 4. It's like Isaiah 24 and verse 4. It says, the earth mourneth and fadeth away. The world languisheth and fadeth away. The haughty people of the earth do languish. The earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, right? And, a lot of that has to do with, Esau, right? With this Monsanto, right? How he ultimately, basically disrupts, right, the order of the ecosystem by planting, these plants, right, that do nothing but suck the nutrients and vitamins and minerals out of the earth, and doesn't ultimately, put it back, right? So that the food that you ultimately eat, right, that comes out of the ground, right, it has no nutrients and has no, no benefit, to your life, But instead, what do? Right, they fill it and pump it full of, glyphosate, right? They spray glyphosate on it, right, which is a weed killer, which they put on your food, which when you look at the FDA, the FDA is the man. I don't even understand the reason for the FDA, right? They're supposed to monitor, what does it say? Food Drug Administration, right? They're supposed to monitor the food, right? And to see if it's, if it's poisonous or if it's healthy or this, that, and the third, but they don't, right? They're ultimately, when you go into the Food Drug Administration, they ultimately tell you that there's certain limits, right? That they're allowed to, have certain, like, I remember when it comes to, because I used to work, man, one of my first jobs, I was like 16, 17. I used to work, at a food processing plant, and this was, years ago, man. And one thing that I was told is, and I didn't work there long, but one thing I was told that they're allowed to, have a certain percentage. It's like 0.0001% of, rat hair, feces, whatever it may be within these canned foods, so it's like you can have bugs or flies or, like in a big ass, 1,000 gallon, tank of, let's say, Chef Boyardee, the fucking, SpaghettiOs, right? Which that shit's fucking processed like everything in that is 100% processed and fake, right? And all those SpaghettiOs, bullshit, top ramen, you know, all of that is just, you're not supposed to be eating that shit, man. That shit don't process. Your body can't break it down and process it right, man. But nonetheless, right, they still allow, different chemicals and bugs and so on and so forth in those canned foods, man. And people end up eating that. They allow for all that. The FDA does, tells you that you're allowed, for certain parts per million or whatever the fuck they're saying, to be in our food. So they don't sit there and say, hey, you got to make this food, be 100% healthy for the people. It's got to, no, they don't care. Right. So this whole place is fucking corrupt. This whole place is just fucking disgusting. It says the earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore hath the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men left therein. Right, this place is defiled, completely destroyed under who is in charge, right? And we know that Esau, Edom, right, he is in charge, right? And again, he doesn't care about the masses, man, right? Esau, wants the people to die, right? This is why he, again, going back to Kill Gates, right? He made that statement talking about, if they do a good job, with the jabs and whatnot, the vaccines, that they could reduce the population by 10 to 15%, right? That is their ultimate goal, right? Esau is that bloody man, right, that the Bible speaks of, as the scriptures say, Ezekiel, the 3rd chapter, since thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. Esau, again, right? Esau wants to kill. He's that hunter, but see, he's not hunting animals, he's hunting people, and he's doing it in various different types of ways, affecting the people's, lives via their food, right? Via the air, right? Because again, he sprays all these different chemicals in the air, and we all breathe it in, This devil has got to go, man. Again, he doesn't care about the average person. Let me grab this. Sirach, the 10th chapter. It says, verse 1, it says, that wise judge will instruct his people, and the government of a prudent man is well ordered. As the judge of the people is himself, so are his officers, and what manner of the man the ruler of the city is, such are all they that dwell therein. And we know that the wicked, right, is in control, right? Job 9:24, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked, right? Well, who is the wicked? Malachi 1:4 tells you that it's Esau, Edom, and we know Esau, Edom today to be the what? The self-proclaimed so-called white man, It says, an unwise king destroyeth his people. Esau is destroying you people, man. Right? Because if you really truly cared, why is it that people at younger and younger ages are getting cancer just based off of the food? The shit don't make any sense. And that's because, again, He doesn't care about the masses, man. You know, he's not following the scriptures. You know, Esau really truly wants to see you people die, man. You know, he wants the, what is it, going back to the Georgia Guidestones, he wants a world population, at 500 million, right? Which that's a roughly, 7.5 billion people being, exterminated, right? And that's via what? Via these foods, right? Via, these jabs. Esau and his different methods of killing you people, man. Right? This is why we got to get the fuck out of here, man. We have to get out of here. Otherwise, what does it say? It says, what does it say? Lest those days should be shortened, right? No flesh shall be shaved. No flesh shall be saved. And the Lord's shortening these days, which means, hey, we're getting out of here soon, but still, right? We still here, man. And we got to continue to pray to Yahweh Shem Yahshua to get us out of here, to continue to, thwart this devil's plans and his agenda. Because this right here, this is fucking bullshit, man. It was actually, not to get too personal, but my mama just went through colon cancer. And that's on the rise as well. Right? Colon and stomach cancer, right? You're basically just cancer of your innards, man. Because of this food, because of, the processed foods and this, that, and the third. You gotta really, try and strive, to take care of yourself, man. In this world, man, to the best of your ability, right? That means if you gotta spend more money, to buy, healthier foods and, and whatnot, so be it, man. You have to take care of your body. Let me finish this out. Sirach 10 and verse 2, it says, so I get verse 3. It says, the unwise king destroyed his people, but through the prudence of them which are in authority, the city shall be inhabited. Right? It says, the power of the earth is in the hand of the Lord, and in due time he will set over it one that is profitable. Right? And that's talking about Yahweh Shai. Right? And then the elect, following Yahweh Shai, right, in their proper order. The 144,000, the rest of the innumerable multitude, But see, again, right, that is to come. We're we're looking down the barrel of a righteous world being established, But in order for that to happen, we understand that this place has to go down, man. And it's going down quick, And while, we watch this place go down, in the meantime, right, we got to continue to take care of ourselves, man. This is, what is that, Sirach 30. And I think it's verse 15. Right. Yeah. Sirach 30 and verse 14. It says, better is the poor being sound and strong of constitution than a rich man that is afflicted in his body. Right. It's better to be, poor, and spend, whatever money you have, right. And eat the foods, that are good for you, that, you can, again, operate, properly. Right? Because again, as the scriptures say, that, we're supposed to take care of this temple, right? He that defiles this temple, hey, what does the scripture say? I don't want to butcher it. Defile temple. Right here, Sirach, or 1 Corinthians 3 and 17. If any man defile the temple of the Most High, which is our body, right? Him shall the Most High destroy. For the temple of the Most High is holy, which temple ye are. So talking about our body, right? We're the temple, and we got to take care of it. Can't defile our temple, and the ways that you do that is by overindulgence, in alcohol, right? You smoking, you eating these defiled foods and whatnot, which we're going to, right? We're under the curses, but you have to try to, stay away from, the processed foods and all that bullshit, like these frozen foods, right? A lot of that shit is fucking damn near 100% processed, man. Unless you're trying to strive and go for the farm, what is it, open graze or free roam chickens and, and whatnot, or beef, you know. But even then, to a certain degree, all that is defiled too. But you're just trying to basically, I heard a brother say it the other day, man. I can't remember who said it. I was just listening to, the lesson. But he said you gotta, I think it was the priest Sha'ar. You kind of have to choose, the lesser of the two evils, in this world, man. And that's how you have to operate, right? Which one's better, even though it's all bullshit, but you have to still try to, which one's going to affect me less, right? Which one is going to, allow me to, allow my body to operate in a good state longer, That's kind of how you have to be, right? It says what? Better is the poor being of sound and strong of constitution than a rich man that is afflicted in his body, right? You ultimately trying to, save your money so you can go and spend it on, dumb shit, Hey, well, guess what, man? You can have, you can have your money, trying to save your money, this and the third. Well, guess what? You're going to be sick. You're not going to be able to spend that money. What's the point at that point, man? Your money just going to sit in your bank account not to be spent. Shit don't make sense, right? It says health and good estate of body are above all gold, right? So it's better for you to just be healthy, right, than for you to have all the money and gold in the world, man. Because if you have all of it, but you're sick all the time, you can't get out of bed, well, you're not going to be able to enjoy it, right? What's the point at that point, right? It says in a strong body above infinite wealth. There is no riches above a sound body and no joy above the joy of the heart. Death is better than a bitter life or continual sickness, right? Right? It's better for you to just fucking perish, man, at that point, man. You just constantly being sick, And this is what happens with these people, man. They're just, they're constantly sick. We're having diabetes. They can't even fucking walk on their own. I seen a woman, going to, a doctor's office, and this lady was so damn big, bro. She was, both her legs and her cheeks, bro, were fucking swallowing up that fucking, that what do you want to call it, man? That cart, whatever she was driving. That thing looked like a fucking regular ass bicycle, That's how big that fucking woman was, man. You can see her legs all red and shit. That's how these people are. They don't want to take care of themselves until the last fucking minute, And then at that point, it's too fucking late, So us having this wisdom, this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, knowing who we are, knowing what, our culture, right? Because our people are into the herbs. Our people are into, health things. We're supposed to be, ultimately, as Elder Apostle Hard, constantly says, man, we're supposed to be our own doctors, man. We're supposed to be able to, ultimately diagnose ourselves, and be able to heal ourselves by, by the herbs and the different, teas and tinctures and so on and so forth, right, that we can ultimately afford and get our hands on, Now again, right, we're the poor and the needy, right, so we can only do that so much. So, do what you can, but try to do your best, man. If you can ultimately get a better job, right, that pays you better money, right, I know it's kind of, in this economy, jobs are being lost. But if you have a job and, you can pick up a little bit more hours so you can have an extra few dollars so that way you can afford some of these things, hey, do it, man. Do what you have to do, in order to, to be a little healthier. Make sure you're taking care of yourself, man. These people out here ain't doing that. Even these health, fitness influencers, this and the third, they not even eating right, man. And again, 80% of your health comes from your diet, man. What are you eating? Right? How many times you're eating? You got to be disciplined, man. Let me end off with this last verse, man, in this precept, right? Sirach 30 verse 25, it says, a cheerful and good heart, meaning your mind, will have a care of his meat and diet, right? Have a care for your meat and diet, right? What you ingest, how you ingest, right? Or how much you ingest. What are you eating? It's better for you to just make a home cooked meal, right? What's going into it, for the most part, rather than you going out to these stores and they're just, or these restaurants and whatnot, and they're just throwing shit together. They don't care about your health. They care about making that money, versus you, right? You can, try, depending on what state you're in. Arizona, it's fucking hard as shit to try to grow anything out here, right? Because the heat ultimately destroys it, right? And there's only a few very limited number of plants that can handle this heat in the summer, But, wintertime, or not wintertime, springtime, fall, right? It's not too bad out here, man. So we could try to, grow, which Lord will, I can start to get into that. Me and my wife, we're ultimately talking about that, a few days back. But, hey, try to get into something like that, man. Grow your own food, your tomatoes and whatnot, which tomatoes are pretty easy, to do, right? You just kind of, you just monitor and make sure that they're, taken care of. Again, it's like a basic, thing that you can do, but try to learn how to do it, man. If you can, right? If you can afford it, grow your own food, man. Buy the seeds, grow your own food, and go from there, and see if that's something that, will ultimately make you a little bit healthier. Again, there's different options, that we can, ultimately utilize, right? That will kind of combat, if you will, right, Esau and his fucking GMO foods, man. And we got to try to utilize that to the best of our ability, the best we can, but I just wanted to ultimately speak on this, man. I had seen it, and that's, that was a spirit, man, because like I said, me and my wife, we were talking about, trying to grow, our own foods and whatnot, just, little something, not too much, but yeah, man, Lord will is edifying. Lord will straight to the point. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rachak Wadash. Double honor said the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of Great Millstone. Till next time, I say shalom.